Welcome to the Flivver channel live stream. Tonight we have the usual gang of YouTube hooligans and a special guest. The regulars here tonight are Randall from the YouTube channel Shed by the Tracks. Randall is an honorary member of the Possum Lodge and is the funniest Iowanian person from Iowa that I've ever met. Randall's incredible Honda Speedster, Prairie Flyer, is a wonder. He claims to have designed it all in CAD. That's cardboard and determination. Rob, whose enthusiasm for Ford Model Ts and Model As is outshone only by his generosity to others. Rob has a Model T that has been in family for generations, and it's still a daily driver, thanks to his incredible mechanic skills. And Vince from the YouTube channel Baggett Corner. Vince is a wonder at repairs and restorations, focusing on stationary hit-and-miss engines and, more recently, a fantastic original Ford Model TT truck. There is nothing he can't fix. And tonight's special guest is Bruce from the YouTube channel Kleps Garage. Bruce has an awe-inspiring collection of old cars, including many very rare automobiles, and most of them are runners. Bruce has a motto: drive them if you got them. Check out Bruce's channel for great videos about his old cars, running them and repairing them. And I'm Steven from Flivver channel. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm really looking forward to our conversation with Bruce. And we're here. Sorry about the glitchy intro. I had forgotten to plug something in, but I think it's better now. Everyone, welcome.
Hey,
Bruce, it's good to see you guys. Bruce, we got some introductions for you here. We got Rob from Kitchener-Waterloo, Vince from Manitoba, and Randall, from Iowa. Welcome, Bruce. It's great to have you with us.
Hey, Bruce.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
No, it's our pleasure, and we're really excited to talk to you. And I think a real good way to get this thing rolling. I understand you have some news on the cross-country Model T run that's underway right now. Could you bring us up to date on that?
Sure. So, if you're not aware, there's the 10 millionth Model T that Ford made that made a cross-country run from ocean to ocean back in 1924 with the 24 Model T touring. And they redone that same thing at the 50th anniversary, and they're doing it this week, June of 2024, with the same 2024 car. I'm told it's not the actual car that did it 100 years ago, but it is one like it that belongs to Speedway Motors out in Nebraska. They started in New York, and they got into Pennsylvania, somewhere out in Pennsylvania, and lost the motor. They made some phone calls. The car and the two guys that's running the car, Mike Bender, I don't know, I think he's out in Nebraska, and Mike Vaughn, I know he's out in Nebraska, who got the car ready and prepped and rebuilt the drive line. They made some phone calls, got a hold of Dave in I think it's in Ashley, Ohio. He's the guy that makes the brand new Model T drums. They're all CNC machine. So he offered his shop, and they took the car there from where it was at, Pennsylvania, to Ohio. And currently, it's going back together. The last 2 days, it's been at Dave's garage. Basically, they lost Babbitt #1 rod, but they didn't lose it. From what I've talked to Dave tonight, I just talked to him tonight. When they reported the Babbitt, for some reason, the Babbitt did not stick to the rod. So it was sitting there floating and spinning. And somewhere out in probably the, I don't know, was it 11, 12, 13% grades in Pennsylvania, because I'm sure they was taking the back roads. They wouldn't be on the interstate. The interstate was limited like 6 to 8% grades. So probably lost oil #1, and it scored, they had a scat crank in it. It scored the crank. They got cast iron particles in the piston and the cylinder walls. make a long story short, they basically had to rebuild the whole motor. So it was not a by the side of the road repair by any means. Dave said they got the car in at 7:30 in the morning. I think he said yesterday morning. And they had the motor out by 8. By 9, they had it all tore apart and cleaned up. Of course, the motor was somewhat clean because they had just rebuilt it. They decided they needed another crank, they needed another set of rods, they needed some pistons, and they needed to bore the block. So they called Joe Bell. Joe Bell's a Model T engine rebuilder up in Tiffin, Ohio, and he told him where to go to a machine shop that could bore it probably the same day. And that was in Upper Sandusky, Ohio. So the car, or the block, was taken up to Upper Sandusky. I guess the guys went and got lunch. When they come back, it was bored and honed already. And it had a crank overnighted, I think he said from Nebraska. One of the guys out there donated a crank and rods that was already poured. And they got some pistons from Snyder's. And they was putting it all together today. When I talked to him here just a half an hour ago, they was putting the hog's head on, was wanting to get the motor back together, probably test run it, and then try to take off on the Lincoln Highway again. So they're running the Lincoln Highway all the way across the states. They was going to go through Van Wert on Wednesday. That's the day I was going to go watch them because that's just up the road from me. Mm-hmm. And then they're going through Randall City, Iowa Falls. No, Cedar Rapids. Is that right, Randy?
Yeah, Cedar Rapids.
So Lincoln Highway goes right through there.
Right through the center of town.
So they'll be going through there, but they don't have it. They didn't set when they're going to start back up on the tour because they want to make sure the motor's done right. It sounds like, they went through the transmission and everything to make sure everything was okay, and they had metal filings in the transmission, and changing the bushings and drums, and so it's like it completely shattered the motor. It sounds.
Wow.
And that was basically all from a bearing not being seated into the
it didn't bond. The Babbitt didn't bond to the rod.
Did it just shatter, or did it pull out and fall down and fall in the case?
Well, I'm not sure. They said that they never heard any knocking noises. It was just all of a sudden it just quit. And and at that point, then I think there was some noise, but they said they never really heard any noises, and it just come apart. They've had a lot of help, and they've also had a lot of naysayers. The guys that just drive their tea to the corner market and get a drink and come back. My tea would have made it.
Then they should have donated it.
These guys are going cross country, and there was one of the Model T guys that rebuilds motors even offered a whole complete motor for them to borrow to use, and they said no, they really wanted to use that motor. So that's a yeoman's job to tear one down in a day and a half, machine it, put it back together, and try to get back on the road. So that's kudos to them. That's really neat. And I've been across country in T, and let me tell you, it's takes a while.
That's gotta be some sort of modern world record, right? Not considering 80, 90 years ago where you could probably get back on the road even quicker with a spare, just pull an engine from somewhere else, but to actually properly rebuild that engine, right, and to strip it right down to the block, to clean everything, to rebore, to size and fit new bearings, new rods, to rebush the transmission, like that all takes a lot of time to do. So that is really, really exceptional, quite extraordinary.
So that's what's going on with that car, and so that is definitely an on-the-road repair that when somebody shop. Of course, 100 years ago, there would have been Ford dealers all across the country that would have, they would have took it to repair it. And they probably wouldn't have said that, oh no, there was nothing wrong with it. We just tweaked it.
In general, though, Bruce, I mean, it's not. It's actually kind of if you just jump ahead, whatever, 10 years, 20 years from now, this is something that you almost. I know nobody's wishing that it happened now, but at least it gives you something to talk about 20 years from now, right? It's going to be the history of this trip, right? It's a
Good story value, yeah.
It's a good story, right?
I kind of wish I'd known about it. I'd like to have gone up and maybe shot some video, but I probably was just in the way. But I don't think anybody's doing any videos or vlogs, but it would have been nice if they did.
Mm-hmm. Hope so.
The machine,
yeah, well,
the machine shop. The machine shop they took the block to, I've actually had work done. In fact, I just picked up a motor last week, and they've got one of my Model T motors, so they're very good. The guy that runs it, I think he's in his 80s. Been going it forever, and his helper's probably 50s. But I'm sure they got it in and zipped it right out.
Good. Well, that's going to be a good trip to hear about. Now, Bruce, you've done some cross country trips and some long trips in a T. Have you ever had any big motor failures like that?
No, knock on wood. In 2013, we went out to the Lincoln, Nebraska, to the Speedway Motors has a Speedsters trial and reunion every 2 years. And I got the bright idea I wanted to do that. I was building a Speedster for my oldest son, Ted, at that time. And that was my goal, to get it done, to go out there in June. And he was 15 and a half and just got his cheater's permit for his driver's license. I said, hey, why don't you just drive the Model T out there? Because you had to have 50 hours drive time in Ohio over and above the classroom activity. I said, well, that would be close to 50 hours. Well, then a licensed driver has to ride with you. Well, I was going to follow in a motorhome, so that left my wife. So my poor wife, Barb, had to ride in the T with him. So that was in 2013. We did it in 4 days. We basically stopped every state line. I think the longest day was 260 miles, and that's a lot for T. And
that's a long day at a T. Yeah.
But we made it out there. The only problem we had with his car, and I was going to throw this in the thing, but I'll do it now. It was a fresh motor also. It was newly rebuilt, so it wasn't broke in. And Model Ts, the first 100 miles or so on a Model T, they'll run hot because everything's dragging and everything's just bound up. And so we figured out early on, if we just took the hood off, it let it run a lot cooler because all that hot air got out there. So that was something we had to do. Other than that, we had to clean the timer once. We didn't have any issue with it. So it was a great trip. And in 2015, I decided I wanted to go out. I wanted to drive. So I have an 11T pickup that I built from parts. And then Ted wanted to drive his Speedster again. So I had a good friend of mine drive the motorhome, and we decided to recreate the whole thing. Did the same route and got out there in 4 days, no problems. In fact, my friend says, he goes, hey, says, something's wrong. I said, what do you mean? He says, you never lifted the hood one time on your car the whole way out here. I said, well, why would I? He says, well, didn't you check anything? I said, let's see, you check the water outside from the radiator, you check the oil from underneath, and you really don't need a fan blade going down the road. So I didn't see a reason to open the hood.
That's confidence.
Yeah, it worked.
That's good. So we wanted to talk tonight about roadside repair jobs and that sort of thing. I know Rob's got some recent experiences along these lines. You want to tell us about it, Rob? I think that was on our. You want to talk about something on our recent Niagara tour?
Yeah, I could start with one particular story on that tour. So for everyone's awareness, this tour that took place in Niagara Falls, I had participated along with Stephen here. Now, the difference was I decided to drive my car from where I live to Niagara Falls, which is probably 150 kilometers. So a little under 100 miles, somewhere around that level. And so this vehicle that I have, it is a 1917 Model T Touring that's right behind me. It is an older restoration, which has had a fair amount of work done to it, but in smaller pieces. So it's not a fully sorted car that has just come out of the shop and from bumper to bumper, if it had them, all new or refurbished. So roughly halfway down that way, I started to get some backfiring. It started to buck and choke, and it was just running miserably. And so as I'm slowing down and people riding behind me are getting increasingly annoyed, I let down on the throttle, on the accelerator a little, and it started to even out. And I thought, well, that's an interesting clue. So I kept going a little piece further at a lower rate, and I decided to speed up again. Well, almost instantaneously, it started choking and coughing and backfiring. So I pulled over to the side of the road and I inspected. I thought I would take a look at my coil box first. I did see all 4 coils firing. And if I revved the engine, if it had idled for a while, it seemed to rev just fine. So I got back into the car and I drove another half mile, and the same thing happening. So then I said, well, I need to stop and think this one through. And so the conclusion that I came to, because of the fact that the throttle seemed to have an impact in it, and believe me, I did play around with the GAV, the gas valve. I had it way too rich, way too lean. I was trying to find equilibrium, but that wasn't making any difference at all. So it occurred to me that it might be a blockage in the fuel. So important safety tip, if you decide that you want to start to address your fuel flow at the side of the road, try not to blow directly into fuel lines. I mean, it's not a particularly good taste, and I wouldn't recommend it. So anyhow, pulled the fuel line, and sure enough, there was a bit of a blockage. So it turns out that I was able to add a little bit of pressure from the gas tank, pressing down and catching it into a pan that I had. And so there had been just a piece of gunk. Wasn't rust, but it was something in between, dirt, that had blocked the line. Once I recovered that, it did return back to full operating speed. So the moral of that story is, as you're driving along and it starts to choke and cough, while it can be a lot of things, you really you want to pay attention to the symptoms. And as you're kind of experimenting alongside of the road, pay attention. Does it seem to go away when you decelerate or when you let off the accelerator? Does it do it the same? Does it cough and jump regardless? That can be an indicator as to whether or not you're talking fuel, if you're talking electrical, or the worst case scenario, both. So that was my story, Stephen, as of recent.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you don't want to suck on a fuel line if you can avoid it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I would rate that 2 out of 10. Like, really not recommend it unless you really have to.
Yeah. Now, Bruce, losing a wheel while you're driving along, you gotta tell us more about this one.
I gotta get proper mode here. Okay, I'm ready. So this car is a 1930 Model A Ford. Actually belongs to a friend of mine named Daryl, and this was actually just last year, I think April or May. He was going on a tour with a local Model A club. He was coming out to my house, and he calls me up and he says, "Hey, Bruce, I lost my wheel." I said, "What do you mean you lost your wheel?" He says, "It's out in the cornfield." I said, "Oh my!" I said, "That's ridiculous." So he was like, I don't know, a mile from my house. So we jumped the truck and grabbed a floor jack and went over there and sure enough, he made his wife run out to the cornfield and get the wheel, and they had it back to the car. But of course, there was no lug nuts. So I said, well, we need to take a lug nut off each wheel. And he says, I don't really want to do that. What if they get loose? I said, well, in that case, let's just take the spare off. We'll put the, I don't know if we put the spare tire on or we just took the lug nuts off. I kind of forget. But we just used those 3 lug nuts, got the car jacked up and back to my place. And then he didn't trust it. Then after that, I went around and checked all the rest of the lug nuts, and they were hair loose, but not bad. And so he rode with the fellow you see there in the picture, John, holding the crank. And so we had a good day, made a good day out of it, but it was just one of them things. I guess the moral here is check your lug nuts.
Yeah, I think that's.
And whatever you do, do not use an impact gun on Model A lug nuts, but you'll run that nut through the rim. That's, you just want to hand tighten them, but you want probably 30 to 50 pounds of torque.
Yeah, a lot less than a modern car in terms of torque, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
good. No damage done when the brake drum skidded down the road?
It's got a flat spot on the bottom of the drum. I don't think that it's that bad. He still hasn't changed it. I think he's still mad at it. But he wants to change the drum, which, that's fine. I think I would probably put it on a brake lathe and turn it and see if it was, true. I don't think the flat spot's going to be, because they have like a lip on them. I think they wore that lip down.
Oh, that's good. Well, I'm glad nobody was behind him and saw that, or coming the other way and got that wheel in the face.
Probably a good thing it was a rear wheel, not a front wheel, because the front wheel might have caused them to veer off the road. And that has happened over the years on Model T guys. They'll run off the side of the road, and then when they go to get back on, I think it was out in California, there was a guy on a tour, and the wood wheel collapsed, broke, and the car rolled, and it actually killed somebody. So they made a big deal out of that too. So it can be bad.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I was going to add to that is the with the Model A's, if you're dealing with a really old drum and hub and the threads are well worn out, even if you use brand new Model A lug nuts, sometimes there's not much to grab to, and then what people do is they under tighten them as well, and that's also not a good situation. Yeah.
Got to say, that's a beautiful color on that car. Man.
Sorry, I keep jumping ahead.
That's probably Arabian sand white, probably is what that. I think that's what that is.
So nice.
Now this is a 1911 T. Is that yours, Bruce?
This is my favorite car. This is I really like this T. This has been in my family. Wait a minute, I got to change hats. We got to get with the right era here. Okay, there we go.
Oh, changing hats to match. That's good.
Yeah. Well, I gotta keep the program alive here. So anyhow, my father bought this car in I'm going to say 1953, the last century, and we've had it ever since. He restored it. In fact, that's the same lacquer paint on it. It's been on it since 54, 55. It's been to Niagara Falls, by the way, Stephen, on a tour. It's been all over the country. It's been down to Wichita Wacha, Florida. It's been out west. It's been all over. And he had rebuilt the motor back today, had it balanced, always run good. And I decided I was going to have a tour. This is the tour I was having, a couple of other cars there. And we was having a good day, and we were all done. We decided to go out for ice cream. Maybe go to the next picture. We went out to get ice cream, and we was coming back. I was sitting. I'll go to the next one. I was sitting at a stoplight. Light turned green. I just took off, and I heard this whack. And I'm like, well, that don't sound good. And believe it or not, that's looking at number one rod bearing there. It snapped right at the crank journal, right where the rod's at. That's number one.
Oh, wow.
And it ran. I don't know how it ran. I went through the intersection, went down a hill, and went probably 2 football fields. It was still running. And we pulled over and stopped, shut off. I got out, and I put it in gear, and I tried to crank it. And, of course, the number one went around, but the rest of the car didn't move. I'm like, okay, I'm now a member of the two-piece crank club. So and that so that I tore that motor apart, and it's actually, well, there it is there. I tore it all apart. There's a broken crank. I'm not sure if that was a Dodge Brothers crank. I couldn't find any markings on it because it had been ground down to balance back in the day. But if you have a crank that says DB on it, that's for Dodge Brothers. And they were okay, you know, back in the day, but they don't seem to hold up after 100 years. So I'm guessing it might be one of those. I got the block is not hurt, and it's a matching number block to the car. Both the body number and the block number match. I have the actual build card from Henry Ford Motor Company that tells what that car came with. So that motor is right now up at Joe Bell's getting rebuilt with a new scat crank. And Carlton that done the 10 millionth T is boring that block. We're sleeving that back to original. And so that one's getting built as we speak.
So Bruce, that still sort of ran because what, you still had 2, 3, and 4 connected to the trans, but one was disconnected basically?
Yeah, but if you think about it, one's connected to the cam. That's running.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the cam wouldn't turn, right?
Right.
It would like lock in at the right sequence and run, and then it would kind of unlock, and I hear this bang, and then it lock back in again, and I'm like, I put it in neutral and coasted into a driveway. I think that one picture we showed there, that's where we coasted to.
Right.
And I hopped into my boy's Speedster, and then he took me home to go get a trailer. And oh, by the way, on the way home, it poured that rain, of course.
Oh, that's crazy.
I don't know if this means anything there, Bruce, but Farmhand Hank said something about a 2-piece crankshaft club, which you alluded to, and the Daryl can, which he mentioned. I'm not sure what that means, but maybe it means something.
Hank's a friend of mine. He's broken a crank on a tour also on a newly rebuilt motor. I mean, it was newly rebuilt, and it just did the same thing. Hi, Hank, and on Deb too. And so Daryl owns that Model A, and Hank and I have a running gag. Hank carries a can. When I carry a can, it's a plastic gas can, like a 1 or 2 gallon can, and we put Daryl can right on the side of it because Daryl is always running out of gas, and then now his wheel falls off. So the running gag is that we have a Daryl can always with us.
This one's a bit out of order, but
what do we have here?
What happened? I'm gonna change that again. All right. So if you're ever on a car tour, everybody's always lost. They're always the blind following the blind. There's always saying, "Go to the next picture." They're always saying, "Which way do we go?" And the consensus here was, we go that way. So that's just a car tour is just a crooked road between places to eat, and the mandatory ice cream stop is always in the afternoon. So
yeah.
we were just, which way? Yeah.
Bruce, just an
That's all.
addendum to that. Just a small addendum to that on the recent tour. My good friend Ben was touring with me, and he was doing the navigating. At one point, we got a little bit lost, and then the rain started, as it naturally would. And but there was this guiding glaze of dripping oil in front of us. There was like, you could see that the water was like multicolored. And so, okay, Model Ts have been here. So let's go that way.
Well,
The
Model
breadcrumbs,
Ts will
yeah.
mark their stop.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
good.
So really, you're never lost on a tour. You're just looking for old cars. You're just on a back road somewhere looking for more stuff.
And follow.
Wow.
You never know who you're following either.
Okay, got you.
New hat for this story. Yep.
So we are now in Texas, Australia, down under. This is I got the rare opportunity to go down under and partake on a Model T tour, and this is the 2 cars that I got to drive alternately. I drove the 4-door there the most, and as luck would have it, we was on a tour, and guess what? We had some breakdowns. So the on the road breakdown on the 4-door. Go to the next picture. Was overheating. Of course, it's always warm down there. Oh, I like this. Oh, that's good. So there, we took the hood off. Like back to my number one thing: if the motors run hot, just take the hood off. Speedster guys already know this because they don't usually run hoods or they take the sides off. So that was a quick fix. And you can go back to the cows. So over there or down there, I don't know, 12,000 miles from here. Anyhow, the cows was free roaming because at the time we was over there was a drought, and so the only grass that was growing was alongside the roads, because if it got any rain, it would wash off, and that's where the grass grows. So they was letting everything free roam. So you can see the cow patties down there on the left. We had to dodge, and of course we had to wait on the cows, and then just kind of looked at us. That was interesting. And of course,
that's amazing trip to be able to tour in Australia.
Oh, it was. It was a chance of a lifetime. There's some actual kangaroos. These are the female kangaroos, are the smaller ones. The males are the big ones you always see punching boxing people. But so, and then, you Canadian guys, you'll get this. The speed limit's 100, which is really about 60 and our numbers. But I thought that was kind of ironic, funny, because we're out in the middle of nowhere, and I have no clue which way is north, south, east, and west, and I don't even know where I'm at. And we got separated from the group. It's like, well, I guess we're going right. I figured, country's an island. If I just keep driving, I got to find water sometime.
It's a big island. Oh wow! Now these aren't your cars, right?
Same size as the United States with half the population. So yeah, I would have been driving for it. So this picture here, and I gotta change hats here again. So
these are all left drive cars. So they weren't originally from Australia, right? Or they weren't British. They weren't European at all.
This bigger car was shipped over from America. That other car, if you go back to that first one, was actually an Australian car. And the way I understand it, the chassis were built in Canada, shipped to Australia, and then Australian companies built their own bodies. Is the way I understand it.
Yeah, that was the most common, according to Mitch Taylor. Yep.
What was that, Stephen?
Yeah, I was asking Mitch Taylor about. I was asking Mitch Taylor about that when I was interviewing him. He's the Model T YouTuber from Australia, and he said, yeah, very few Australian cars have a Canadian-made body. They always, for the most part, they ship chassis only from the Windsor, Ontario plant all over the Commonwealth, including Australia, and then they had their own coach builders in Australia that put the bodies on. So
that touring car, the maroon one, it's got kind of a straight body on it. Looks more like a 13, 14 body. But that windshield is a fixed windshield, and it's all one piece of glass. It doesn't remove, it doesn't open. And the top is a soft top, but it had metal rails. You actually couldn't put it down. It was to stay up. And over there, they all run. They call it. The hood. Yeah, they call that the hood. And
bonnet.
It's more to keep the sun off of it.
Yeah,
it is.
Hey, Bruce,
Yes.
Is that one there? That maroon one. That sort of a hard top that's over the driver and passenger, or just over the driver's seat there. Is that a hard top, and then there's a soft cover over top of that as well? Is that how that works?
No, it's just a soft cover. It has an inner lining, like the old tops always had like a white inner lining, and that's what this one has. It's actually like 2 layers of canvas.
Oh, okay.
You have an outer and inner.
Right. Looks interesting.
Actually, I think that outer is vinyl. Yeah. So it's made to kind of look like a hard top.
Mm-hmm. Oh, would there be a wood frame in there?
I'm looking to see if.
I'm sorry?
I'm looking to see if there's another shot.
So, the one where the people are standing around, we were driving, we made lunch stop, and we was behind because it's a 4-door, didn't go all that fast, and it was running hot, so I didn't run it too hard. And the guy there on the left, that's Merv, and I'm pretty sure he gave me this hat, if I remember right. Thanks, Merv, and his wife, Karen. The guy in the biddies, or the braces, as he calls them, that's Doug Partington. He was our host. That 4-door decided to shatter a transmission drum and ate all the bands, and it didn't go forward anymore. Merv was behind us. I didn't know he was behind us. So we pulled over, and I said, we're by ourselves. We're in the middle of nowhere. I'm in a country that I have no idea which way to go. And he goes, you guys got problems? I'm like, well, yeah. So, and of course, I didn't have any cell service because my American phone didn't work down there unless you paid. So he called some people, and they brought a trailer, and they took the car back and took the motor out of it. A guy by the name of Ian rebuilt the motor and had it back up and running, I think, a week or two after we were there. So, thanks to Graham and Ellen, that's whose car that was. So, sure, throw out a thank you to them.
Were they mostly rural roads like that, Bruce, or was it all paved? Or
no, this would be kind of what we call out in the bush. Yeah, and they have everything's different down there. They call that, I'm going to butcher this. They call it bitumen or something like that. It's like an asphalt, but it's like a loose asphalt. It's not gravel, but there are gravel type roads, dirt type roads. But yeah, it's just altogether different.
We have a fair amount of that up here as well, Bruce, where they take the asphalt and then they chop it up basically into fine aggregate, and then they spread it out on the country roads in the rural areas like that. Probably the same
thing.
Same idea.
Yeah. So yeah, it doesn't matter what country you're in or what you're driving. Anything's going to break sooner or later. That's Ian standing, another friend that come to help us. So shout out to Ian. I forget I think he's in Queensland, I think. Anyway.
What year was this, Bruce? When did you do this?
Pretty sure this was 2018.
Okay. Got another one planned again, heading down there, another country, something similar?
Yeah, but I don't know if I can stay in a plane ride. So it's basically, it's 24 hours from the time you leave your house to the time you get there, and you lose a day. So you lose a day? Yeah, you lose a day. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, it's all right, but it's just, it's a long ride. I could have landed in Mars. I wouldn't have known the difference. In that plane, it's dark the whole time.
How was the beer? Was the beer pretty good, though?
You're good, except you remember the 3-2 beer we used to have here?
Well, you guys got that weak beer down there. We don't have that weak beer up here in Canada.
Randall's nodding away there.
But I meant, Randall, we have like 6% beer, I think, here. And you used to have 3-2, which was half the percentage. I think you could be younger and buy it. Well, over there, most of their beer was like 4%. So I'd be just porking it down. Like, you better go easy on that. I'm like, why? It's only 4%.
It's mostly
but yeah, they did have good beer. They had a lot of different brands that I've never heard of, and it all tastes like beer. And it went down smooth, and when in Rome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not.
Oh yeah, we got something else, I think.
Yeah, this one's pretty interesting.
No.
I forgot about this hat. I was holding on to wear this.
New hat.
I wore this one. Okay. Let me put my Jeep duck up here. There we go. You see that? For some reason, Jeeps have ducks. This is a Tony Pacos from Toledo, so that's kind of neat. So anyhow, that's my old family friend. That's a 1948 Jeep pickup. That was the first vehicle I ever bought when I was 17, I think, and I still have it, of course. And I've used her since then. It's had a hard life. It's on its, I think, maybe third paint job. I know it's on its fourth motor, at least fifth transmission, second drive shaft, second rear axle. If you can break it, I've broken it on this truck. It's fun. So anyhow, here I am. I decided to take some scrap down to my my recycling guy that's about, I don't know, 5 miles from my house. I get about 3 football fields away, and the tire just completely disintegrated, just I guess from old age. The tread separated, and then I decided to wrap the fender up and around the tire. So I had to pull that out, and then to get it back home, I decided we'll just take the fender off and drive it with the tire like it is, because you might notice there was a Model A tire there for a spare. Ironically, it's the same bolt pattern as the Jeep, and it will fit on the rear, but it won't fit on the front because of the lockout hub. But I was too lazy to change it on the roads. I just decided to drive it back home and change it at home.
It almost looks like a retread on there.
It does. And radial tires are really bad about that. They'll just sit around. In fact, I had a car that done that here just, I guess it was last month. I went out in my barn and one of my cars was sitting crooked. I said, I must have a flat tire. And sure enough, I went to put air in it. It was coming out faster than I could put it in. And the whole top section looked just like this. Of course, the tire was only 30 years old. I don't know why it just fell apart.
I don't know why. Who knows why? That's a nice setup. I really like that truck. That's really nice, Bruce. Really cool.
It's still got the original drive line. However, I went with what's known as the F-head motor, which is 4 valves in the head, 4 valves in the block. Originally, it had a flat head. So I upped the horsepower by a whole 20 horse. Woohoo! Then I have
an entire Model T worth.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty neat.
So I think that's most of the stories I was going to share. You guys got any questions?
We must have some questions at least coming from the folks out there. Let's just post it.
In the meantime, Rob, I saw you holding a starter there a minute ago. Let me just get you up on screen here for a second.
Yeah, so why was I holding a starter motor with a 1917 car? Well, the answer to that is that the block in here is a 27, I believe. And so it is a bit of a cheater car in the way that I do have the wider brake band as well as the starter and generator capability. But I have here the starter motor in question, the problematic one. So here I am driving around on one of the first, I guess, tours that I've been on ever since I got the car back on the road. And I'm traveling with a few friends from the Model T Club International and the Ontario chapter around here. And somebody said, you're leaking a lot of oil. And this car, I mean, it was usually pretty good, but there was something new about it. And so on the side of the road, I'm digging around, I'm looking, I'm letting the car run. I can't see it coming from anywhere. So I drive a little bit down the road and I stop, and then there's a great big new puddle, right? And drive further and stop, and the same thing. And it seemed to only be when driving. So I'm thinking, well, it's got to be coming from around the hogshead. I'm thinking the bushings are worn where the pedals come out, and maybe as you're pushing, it's spitting out. But no, it was coming out in the end. It was just pouring out of the weeping hole in the starter motor. So all of these, for those of you who aren't too familiar with them, underneath there is a weeping hole that was drilled at the bottom here, and that is for the purpose of releasing excess oil. Remember, this fits right into the hogshead, and you have your Bendix on the end, and this bushing in here is completely worn out. It was letting in hordes of oil, especially as the flywheel was spinning it around as quickly as it does. So a very unlikely or unsuspecting cause of a major oil leak, there's not much I could do about it on the side of the road other than just get it home and deal with it. But yeah, so that was just an interesting find at the side of the road I wanted to share. Bruce, I'm sure you've seen more than your fair share of lack of oil situations.
If a Model T isn't dripping oil, it's out of oil. That's all there is to that.
That is
I do
the
got
rule.
I do got another story. If you got time, I got a couple quick stories. Usually guys will call me and say, what's going on with my car? Like, it's not running right. So a good friend of mine, Hank, again, called me up. He says, hey, I'm running down the road and started loading up. I pulled over. I got gas running everywhere out of the carburetor. What do I do? I said, well, it sounds to me like your float's stuck and it's just letting air out. I said, you got something to hit it with? And he says, what do you mean hit us? I said, oh, look around, see if there's a rock somewhere. And he says, well, I'm out in the middle of a cornfield. I said, there's no rocks in the cornfield? I said, let's go get a rock and tap on top of the carburetor. That'll fix it. So he went out there and found one and tapped on it. He says, you're a genius. I said, no, it's just something you got on a Model T. And then I was sitting here. Another story, I was sitting here. Go ahead.
That might be what he's asking about, because Hank posted a question. He said, ask Bruce how to fix a stuck. But he didn't say anything. I'm expecting it must be stuck float.
Oh, yeah, stuck float. That's how you fix it. You just lightly tap with a ginormous rock. So I was taking a swig of water, which reminded me of another story. I was on a tour here years back, and a friend of mine was driving a T, and it was all restored, beautiful looking T, but it had the death wobble. Every time you hit a bump, the wheels would do one of these numbers. He goes, well, I'm not going to drive it tomorrow, 2-day tour. And I said, well, let's fix it. He said, can't be that much wrong with it. He said, oh, no, I'm not messing with it. And he was older. So unbeknownst to him, after everybody went in for the night, about 8, 9 o'clock, I went out to look the trailer up, so I'm going to see what's wrong with this thing. Well, the I guess it'd be the pitman arm and the drag link where they meet, the steering, bottom of the steering column, was just loosey-goosey. Yeah, and so there was no shims or anything. You couldn't tighten it up any. It was loose. So I'm thinking, what can I put in there? Thinking back on it now, I should have used a penny or a nickel. I didn't have it. I was drinking water, so I took one of these and cut the sides off of it and stuck this plastic round part in there, put it back together, and made a shim. That is what's known as a semi-temporary permanent fix. It's still in there.
It's still in there.
Bruce, also known as a temporary 10-year fix.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
but that's not period correct, Bruce. I don't know if that can be allowed.
It's a nickel or a penny. That would have worked better.
Well, it would have had to been the right date, though, right? Like 1920s.
Yeah,
we got to wrap it. We got to wrap this up. I got to get out to the garage.
Yeah, you got your water bottle ready. You're going to fix your steering right away.
Axle shims. If you had any spare axle shims, that would also work. You could cut a piece and shove it in there.
Yeah, it's just little things that you just don't have these things on the tour. You can't bring a spare motor. It's like the guys with the 10 millionth Model T. Somebody said, "Why don't you just take a spare motor? Where are you going to put that in the back seat?" You just can't take everything. So you got to get pretty inventive, and there might have been a couple of adult beverages drank while I was coming up with this idea too. But anyhow.
Well, it's just catch as catch can, right? Whatever you can do to get it going.
Now, Bruce, do you still do tours?
Oh yeah. That's what I've always done. I don't really do shows. I like to drive them. My motto's driving if you got them. I had a friend of mine that lived next state over, and he was afraid to drive. I said, drive over so I can, help you work on it. Oh, I don't think it'll make it. And I just kept asking, said, just get in it and drive it. If you break down, call me. I'll come and get you. And so finally he started driving it, and when he didn't break down, he kept driving it further, and he'd come over and see me. And now he just goes all over the place. I said, well, you was always worried about, breaking down. He said, oh, I don't worry about that anymore. He said, I got a great towing service. I just call my friends. I'm like, okay.
As long as he's not too far from you, right?
Yeah.
Now, Bruce, you must have a story about coils. Like, we haven't talked trembler coils here. I all the touring that you've done, I'm sure you've had your fair share of failures or having to fiddle with them.
Not really. I usually keep them up, and in one of my episodes, I do a brief commercial for the coil doctor who's out of Reynoldsburg, Ohio, that rebuilds coils. I actually went over there. He did a coil seminar for a couple of clubs here years back. I went over there, and he had us rebuild a coil and showed us how to do it. The main thing is the proper gap in the points, and then also a new condenser is usually all that ever goes wrong with them. I've never really had a coil failure, but I've always kept them up. And then I went over one day for like a coil session with him, and I think I took 20 of them over there, and I had them all ready to go. And we just changed the capacitor and put new points in it and went through it. And then I've got a couple of coil testers that I usually test them. The other big thing is, and he told me this, is Brett told me this, take them out in the wintertime, store them someplace dry, because the damp, cold air will swell the boxes.
Oh, okay.
And that's also what makes them condensers break down over the years. So I usually take the coils out in the wintertime, and I put them back in the summertime. And an ammo box is perfect size for 4 coils, and that's what I keep them in. But now, if the gap's about 20, 30 thousandths, and then the cushion spring you got to play with, but the condenser is the main issue on those coils.
Right.
Yeah, now I do have a story about a coils from the only tour I've ever done, which was just a couple weekends ago, but it's not much of a story, really. I mean, I was driving back from on the last day of the tour, driving back from the last stop to the campsite, and it was a free for all. Everybody was just going their own way. It wasn't really a route. It's just everybody heading back in their own way. And for the first time in the tour, I was completely on my own. Rob wasn't around. He was going off to do some errands or something on the way. And, I thought I'll just drive back. That's no biggie. I've got GPS and I can find my way. But sure enough, 5-10 minutes after Rob leaves and I'm all alone on the tour, the car starts sputtering and struggling to go up hills and won't go any more than 25 miles an hour. And, I was pretty sure I knew I had lost a cylinder, because I had the same problem there a couple of years ago. And so I just limped it home, because I was only, I guess, the last 15 minutes of the whole weekend just to get it back to the campsite. But before I shut it off, when I got there, I popped the cover off the coil box and just felt which ones were trembling and which ones weren't. And sure enough, there was one of them that wasn't buzzing anymore. So it had gone. I don't know what yet. I haven't tried to diagnose what the problem was, but all your tours, Bruce, and you've never had a coil problem, and here I am on my first one. I guess I've got a lot to learn about looking after these things.
The other thing is maintenance, is keeping all the contacts clean, like every year going with some little emery cloth or something just to brighten them up. Another trick to do is pull them out at nighttime, lift the hood, and where the insulators come through the wooden dash, while the motor's running, look in there and see if sparks jumping through the insulators, because that can happen. And if the dash is like wet, they'll just jump. They'll just jump to whatever ground they can find, and it doesn't make it to the plug. And so that's a couple little tricks to look for.
Sure. Now, Randall, you had any good breakdown stories?
No, just what I told you a while ago is I have forgot to turn the gas on once or twice. And
that can happen. That's an easy one to fix.
I don't have a starter on mine, so it makes a spectacular show in the middle of an intersection when they get started again. Yeah. Because, it's hot now and it doesn't want to start.
Of course.
Yeah. But
and the more people watching, the less likely it will start as well, I find.
And I had some trouble with coils too, and I managed to fix it by taking them out and throwing them in a box in the garage.
Oh, and putting a distributor on the car.
They have not caused me any trouble since.
That's one way.
I do that. these generators, I just throw them over my shoulder.
Yeah.
I don't have a generator.
Sorry, Vince, go ahead. And then there is a question in the chat as well. Yeah.
Oh,
go
yeah.
ahead.
Plywood Palace asks, do any of us use an e-timer? Bruce, e-timer by chance?
I have not tried them. I thought about it, but then I got thinking, if you're going cross country, where are you going to get one of them? You can get all the original stuff. If you're on tour, most people carry original stuff, and it's worked for the last 100 years.
Yeah.
I'm not downgrading the ECCT, but I'm just saying that I don't know. It's not proven. It's not been out for 100 years.
Mhm.
Well, you know what you got, you know what works, and so you kind of stick with that, right?
Yeah, I've got a couple that I'm running Bosch distributors on, but there again, now you got a set of points and one newer coil, and I mean you can have troubles with anything. There's nothing that's foolproof. We're always trying to build a better mousetrap. I mean that's been the whole history of the Model T. There's been thousands of companies that build accessories for the Model T. Oh, this is the latest and greatest thing. You've got to have this.
Oh, absolutely. It's all been building a better mousetrap right since the beginning, right? It changes every year, whatever. Right?
Day one, they got the car started. Day two is how do we make it go faster?
Right.
So,
he also goes on to say we use it in November with no issues other than a little oil that we had to clean a few times, and that was it. Goes by his actual name is Todd. So there you go.
Yeah, he did the cross country tour for hydrocephalus last fall, so he knows all about going cross country in a Model T, and he did it fast. He did it in 10 days.
10 days. That's great. Yeah. Wow, that's moving.
I think he said earlier his longest day was 330 miles.
Oh man, no kidding. 330 miles.
We'll have to get Todd on this live stream one of these months because I think it'd be great to hear the cross country story from him directly.
Why would anybody want to be in that big of a hurry?
12, he says, I'm not sure. Sorry, I'm kind of missing some gaps there. 12, he says, I use it taking fatigue into factor.
12 days. Okay.
12 days.
Yeah, it was a heck of a trip.
Wow. Incredible.
Yeah, that is something, isn't it? Wow.
All right, guys. Well, that's been a great show. I think we can wind it up there. Bruce, thanks for joining us. It's fantastic to have you on and hear the stories.
Nice talking.
It's a pleasure. I've got a little outro reel I can run here, but first I'll let each of you guys say goodbye, and then I'll run the outro reel. And I'm sure we'll talk to all you guys again soon.
Yeah. Great seeing you guys.
Everyone, and good to be back.
I'll do a shameless plug. Kleps Garage, driving if you
Drive if you got him. Great to meet you today, Bruce, too.
Thanks to our special guest tonight, Bruce from Kleps Garage. It was an absolute pleasure having you on. I hope you'll join us again sometime. I don't think we've exhausted the great stories you can tell. And thanks to my co-hosts, Randall, Rob, and Vince. Couldn't do it without you guys. Randall, thanks for the music that you made for this show. It's fantastic as always. And thanks to the viewers who tuned in to listen to us old car guys rambling on about old car stuff. We really appreciate it. Good night.